Welcome to the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast. We are thrilled to have Jade Young joining us in the convertible today. Jade is a champion for women discovering their own greatness, whatever their age or stage of life, their size, upbringing, education, or abilities. Born and raised in Hawaii, Jade has had her own consulting practice for over 25 years, coaching executives and other professionals in image and presentation. After dealing with a series of personal losses, the death of loved ones, a difficult divorce, and experiencing serious burnout, Jade left the glitz and glitter of the big city and relocated to a quiet green oasis of a small countryside town on the big island of Hawaii. There, through many hours of yoga, gentle grief work, and other transformative spiritual practices, Jade learned to pick up the fragments of her life and transform the brokenness into gifts of beauty, grace, wisdom, and resilience. Right on, Jade. But her journey of healing from the inside out, of restoring her spiritual well-being, of finding joy and delight again, of rebuilding her health, opened the doors to revisioning a new future for herself. I love that in her mid-50s, she returned to graduate school and received a Master's of Divinity from a progressive seminary in Berkeley, California. Today, in the autumn of her life, she has discovered new creative energies, has refocused and rebooted her life to educate, counsel, and provide safe healing spaces for those navigating life changes, and especially those diagnosed with terminal illness and dealing with end-of-life matters. As a life coach and a hospice educator chaplain, she consults with clients to help them navigate the tricky waters around death and dying. One of her favorite quotes, which comes from the Persian mystic poet Rumi, "Every life experience is bred for the journey." This philosophy informs her life work as a life coach and spiritual midlife, and we know you're gonna love it. So pop in the mixtape, call shotgun, and let's hit the road for another episode.
I'm Sandra.
And I'm Nicole, and we're entrepreneurs,
Wives,
a mom,
a favorite auntie,
creative souls.
and women who are fearlessly navigating the middle of life.
We created a community of women over 40 who embrace the past, appreciate where we are now, and take action to live our best life, because it's all about the journey. Hello, Jade. Welcome.
Welcome,
Hello.
Jade.
Hi. Well,
So
I'm
glad
happy
to
to
have
be
you.
around creative souls, believe me.
Yes, I love it. Well, Jade, we begin every podcast with asking our guests the same question, and we would love to hear your answer. If you could run off on an epic road trip with any person living or dead, who would it be? And bonus points if you know where you're going.
God. So hard to narrow it down to one. But it may sound like an obvious choice, but if I'm on an epic road trip, I think I would really want to go and share it with Oprah.
Ooh, good one.
Maybe.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, because I would say we would have such a blast. I mean, talk about wild woman. That woman is clearly a wild woman, free from the inside out. And though she's really dealt with so many challenges and adversity in her life, and she didn't let that stop her. So if I, to use some of your language, she is someone who I have admired. She has fiercely navigated, like myself, I consider that as well. And that she is just a fierce, ferocious, and amazing woman. So I could say,
Jade, where would you go?
oh gosh, now that's the next question. I think some of the sites, because I was thinking about that. Where would I go? First, I want to go, I've always wanted to go to the Mediterranean on a yacht and cruise all the high points from Turkey to Greece, but then also to visit the goddess sites, perhaps in Ireland and Scotland and in France, the Chartres Cathedral.
Wow.
And,
That would be
but
amazing.
many massages.
Yes.
Ooh,
Yes, you
yes.
have to fit self-care into your epic journey. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine Oprah would not want to do that either. That sounds like the best part of the trip.
Yes.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, our topic for today's discussion is Wild Woman. When did you last see her? I understand that you were inspired by the book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Can you share more about how this transformed your lens as you celebrated your 50th birthday?
Yeah, I'll do my best here. First, I want to say I got introduced to her when I was living on the Big Island, and I was part of a book study with a group of women. And I was in this age zone, 45, 50. And I think many of us were already, you could say, questioning, who are we and who are we now? And those who had been mothers, I'm not a biological mother, but I have had stepchildren. I've had a successful career and actually two or three. So, you kind of hit the pause button sometimes and you're like asking yourself, well, what now? I already have had this kind of accomplishments and it brought great rewards and recognition, but really, where was the deeper satisfaction? So when I read this book, and she talked about, and she, uses a lot of her background is Spanish. So the phrase in Spanish is la criatura, which is really great if you roll your tongue. La criatura. And it really means that wild woman within. Doesn't mean she's necessarily dancing on the table, although if that's your thing, that's fine too. But it really has to do with, I think, a much deeper level of connecting to what's really authentic now. What really makes your heart sing? Maybe the career or the whatever you did 10 or 15 years ago was you wanted to impress people or you wanted to please somebody or you wanted to accomplish just as a way to feel like you could do it. I mean, I think there was a lot of that for me. Like, I just wanted to know that I could, quote unquote, be a success and have joy around it, but it wasn't just purely for me. So I was just in this time of questioning. And when I read the book, it really had me pause and say, well, Jade, what now? And what inspires me? So, and if you want me to talk, did you ask about the milestone birthday? I can't remember now the question.
Wasn't it around your 50th that you read the book?
Yes. And so thanks. You guys might have to, I get off into this little tracking and I forget, like, where were we?
No worries.
It's all good. It's all good.
So, yes, when I arrived on the Big Island, I'm just going to say first as a little, quick background. I was physically exhausted, emotionally wiped out, and I mentioned just really dealing with serious burnout and adrenal fatigue. So the physical just depletion was a part of it. I had been doing, beautiful work. I mean, with my clients, my image consulting work, as well as I was doing a lot of fundraising with a nonprofit. So I was traveling to New York, San Francisco, all from Hawaii now. So,
wow.
And when you're working 12, 15-hour days and loving it, after a while, you're so excited with all of it, the intensity of this lifestyle. I did not realize how exhausted I was. That's one thing I want to say. And it wasn't until I noticed, like, I was tired. I was tired all the time. I was getting snippy and irritable at everybody. I said, something is going on. Plus, I had a low-grade cold that I couldn't quite shake. So my body was speaking to me. So I'm going to talk about body wisdom because that's an important piece of, and then it was around my menopause. And I think as women, and again, I really appreciate having a format to share this because I think it's some of the things we as women don't often have the space to talk about, or it's not part of this public conversation. It's still a little hush hush or taboo. And you might say it with your best friend, over a glass of wine, but, to talk about it now over a Zoom call or a YouTube, it's like, oh my God, what freedom.
Yeah.
So I was in a place where my body was, first of all, knocking on the door and saying, hey girl, you need to slow down and take better care of yourself. You've been there for other people, for your clients, for the Hunger Project, and you were there when you were married, taking care of the kids and, their well-being. But what about you? So I think all of those things really spoke to me when I read the book with a group of other women, thank God, because sometimes we need that encouragement from our sisters. See, I grew up with brothers and no sisters. So it's kind of like I grew up really as a tomboy. And, when you're a tomboy, there's some benefits to it also, because you're very, you're comfortable in your body, and like I'm very athletic and I love to swim. But I wasn't used to having the love and tenderness of women friends. And
Yeah,
being,
there's something about a sisterhood, right?
yeah, the sisterhood, to speak from,
Yeah.
and to then share things that were deeply meaningful to me. Because, with guys, you're not going to share a lot of the stuff. But with your women friends, you figure they can relate.
And I think particularly when you're involved in reading something that prompts questions and reflection, like this book that you read, I think it's probably a beautiful time for you to really look back at that time in your life and how this book may have transformed you.
I'm going to say it's so true. Every single word you just said, because I realized then when my birthday of turning 50 rolled around, all of a sudden I realized 50. Oh my gosh, that's half a century. And so part of me, that sounded like a long time, when you're 30 and 40, kind of like, oh, you're still young. But for somehow 50 had a little kind of serious tone to it, because it was half a decade. And when I saw that, like half a decade, OMG, what was my life about then? Kind of like there was up to now, how was it? And I would say it's not like I was unhappy or miserable. I was very happy with what I had accomplished, but it's kind of like halftime in a football game too. You want to take some time out to reflect, to discern, that's the other word I would use, to really weigh, well, I've done this so far. Do I want to continue doing that? Or do I want to make some changes, a small change or maybe a bigger change? So all those things kind of came flooding. And
what happened, Jade? I want to know, because I just turned 50. So I want to know, did you find that wild woman?
Yes, I'm going to say yes. And, I want to, you can ask, one of your questions was, well, how did you sort of awaken to her? And I love that, because I had to ask myself, because first I want to say it's a process. It's not like I woke up one morning and I went, oh, ta-da, here are all the answers. I think sometimes, at least for me, it's really been this process of tiny steps and discovering along the way. So I'll give an example. On the Big Island, I got back into swimming. So there were so many beaches there that are kind of like wild. They're not all like pretty and cultivated, but there's like you're in nature. And I realized I had been in the big city for so long, I lost my connection with nature. And in nature, I felt so at home, at ease, like it was that natural part of me. In fact, I'm going to use the French word, au naturel. And I had to go back and say, well, who am I without all the frills, without whatever my image had been by then, or whatever accoutrements, it's kind of like a stripping down, I'm going to say. Like, I didn't have my clients, I didn't have my business anymore. People didn't even know about my background. So it was just kind of Jade, like, who am I now, this moment, not my whole history. So, I'm going to say, I don't have a quick answer. How did I find her? But being in the ocean, being back in touch with my body, and I'm going to say something, the health, and just, there's something sensuous about being in the ocean and about being out in nature. and this may not be true for everyone, but it was for me. It just kind of allowed me to drop into a deeper place. And I'm going to call it, because we had different words for talking about it. I think there's an underground river or a deep place in us that's kind of like a quiet voice, a stillness. And sometimes we can't hear it because we're so busy running around. We're so busy, you know, whether it's picking up the kids or going to another meeting or doing this, doing that. And that's what I had been doing. So all of a sudden I was in a quieter place and I could tune in.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And I so agree with you on that. And I think it comes with the seasons in our life where perhaps when we're coming out of our schooling and we're trying to get established with a career, we're solely focused on the rat race and getting ourselves out there and making a name for ourselves and really looking at that. And we really take for granted our bodies and where we're at with our spirituality and our mind, thinking, we've got plenty of years, we got plenty of time, like
Right.
We're solid. And then we get into that space for those of us that decide to have families where they take our immediate focus. I remember thinking, wow, like there was a lot of years where I was treading water, just trying to keep it all together, because you give of yourself to the point where it's completely depleted for your children and to keep the house. And if you're juggling career on top of that. So yes, like coming to a place where you can pause and quiet everything else, the outside, and really just listen. And Sandra and I did a podcast earlier, just the two of us, and we were talking about tapping into that piece with meditation and listening and finding a way to ground yourself, whether, like you said, getting out into nature or just taking time to see yourself with a different lens. I think that's a beautiful transformation and discovery that you can go through.
Thank you.
As a woman. So thank you for sharing that, Jade. That's beautiful. I want to just touch base a little bit, because I know you talked about how you were sort of in that really tough season for a bit before you had this transition, and you basically made the realization that you needed to do some work healing on the inside and the outside. What did that look like? Can you share a little bit about kind of the work that you did?
And in fact, it's going to relate. I'm going to connect with something you were saying also. I think when we're, as women, when we're in our 30s and 40s, and part of it is cultural and the social kind of demands, you know, whether you're a mother and you're also a career woman, or you have your own business, and then if you're entrepreneurial, you may be doing what I call the one-woman band. You know, I was literally the one-woman band. I didn't have like a backup of 10 other band players, like a small business. But I did all the marketing and promotion. I designed the workshops. I did a whole lot of public speaking almost every week. I was out 4 or 5 nights a week. I also led and facilitated the workshop. And I was the CEO as well as the janitor. So, and I say that because literally you do everything. And I had the stamina and energy as a 30 and 40-year-old. I mean, I have to say, I went back to old files I had. I'm like, oh my God, who was that woman? She was unstoppable. And I bet you guys are, like, you can go, 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 go. And then it's kind of like when the weekend comes or whatever your day is, you just kind of drop. I mean, it's like crash. And I think what happens is our bodies can do it up to a point. And that's what I'm going to say when the chronic fatigue. So that was what happened for me. I had chronic fatigue. I didn't even know I had it because you keep pushing, pushing, pushing. And I remember talking to my women friends and saying, I felt like I was a bulldozer. You know how a bulldozer, you just keep bulldozing. There's another thing in front of you. Okay, got to get that done. Bulldoze. And even if I was tired, I didn't pay attention. I kept going beyond the point of exhaustion. So then that was, I went to see also a naturopath, and the whole thing of adrenal fatigue, which you may have heard of. So it's something that I think women in their 40s and 50s are even maybe suffering from some form of it, but don't realize it. Because we're so used to being on for everybody else. Your husband, your business, your school, the kids, the PTA. For me, it was my clients and my, other projects. But when it came to Jade, I was the last person, So you have to refresh my memory now. What was the question?
That's okay. Just starting the process with healing internally and externally.
Well, it was really because of the chronic fatigue. I realized something's going on here. And then plus, I'm going to say I had this lower backache that didn't go away. And I've always done a lot of yoga. And even with my yoga, and I swam a lot during that time in my 40s, I would still, the relief would be for an hour, but there would be this ache in my lower back. And I really had to, it's like when your body starts talking to you, like for some women, it might be a pain in your pelvic region. And the whole thing that's important, if it does not go away, if it becomes chronic, sometimes you have a pain and in 2 or 3 or 4 days, it's gone. Okay. But when it hangs on week after week after week, it is your body. And this is the body wisdom piece that is important. And also it's around menopause. So all of these things were kind of like, menopause isn't, again, just in 1 year. It's the leading up to it. So by the time I was in my mid 40s, all these things were happening. Now it's interesting. I have another woman friend who lives in the Bay Area. She's about 45, my age when I was going through what she's going through. She told me what she was doing this past weekend. And I went, oh my God, you sound like me when I was 45. And she said, my lower back was aching for weeks. And I just had to say to her, I said, I'm not a doctor, but you might want to think about and consider that you're just on overload. So I think that's the other thing we as women do. We just take it on. We take on the world. We take on our kids. I mean, it's just, and I'm going to say it's that thing about having it all together you mentioned. Keeping it all together. I was so focused on that I had to do that. And my other side of Wild Woman was I was into being Superwoman, which maybe some of us can relate to, or Supermom, right? You're Superwoman, Supermom, you can do it all, you're going to have it all, and you can be it all. But I'm going to say it takes a toll. It just takes a toll.
I think it's really interesting to sit and really identify when your body is speaking to you, like you said. And there comes a point, I know in me with dealing with my autoimmune illness, my body said, Nicole, enough. Like, you need to start paying attention to what I'm telling you, because our bodies are so smart and they can heal once given the opportunity to do that. But like you said, we have to carve the time. We have to identify that there's a problem and not just push it off. I'll get to that when I get to
later.
Right. No. Why have that quality of life depreciate?
If your child came to you with the same thing, you would do something immediately.
Right. Even our pets. If my dog came with an issue, I'd be calling the vet.
That's right. That's right.
So, yeah, it's really incredible, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? So again, part of it, I think, is the kind of expectations we put on ourselves. And I'll just speak for myself. Yeah, I mean, and it's not like I was miserable doing my work and my profession. I loved it. It was such a high. And I'm going to say another piece, which, again, I discovered when I was on the Big Island, finally, when I was able to step away from what I call the fast track, the fast lane, or the rat race, whatever term you want to use. But I stepped out of the fast lane into the slow lane. And it was only then that I could see in retrospect how crazy I was. But, you know, up to then it looked like it was great and terrific, and it was from the outside, but I wasn't aware of the toll it was taking on the inside.
Mm.
So my inner woman, I'm going to say, also came calling. You know, when some parts of you start knocking on the door, and that was part of the adrenal fatigue. And then when I started hearing these little quiet voice saying, you know, it's okay to slow down. You know, it's okay. You don't have to be on and perfect and magnificent. Here's the other thing, all the time. I had no room for my life to be messy. I had to be the perfect whatever every moment. And that's so much pressure, you know. So on the other side now, I just have to say it's really fun with dealing with messy when life gets messy.
Well, and
I couldn't say that 20 years ago.
And I think when you change your expectations, right, Jade? When you change your expectations, then it opens you up to other possibilities, other ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
I think that when we shift judgment that we might have for ourselves, whether it's around being a mom, being a working woman, being in a relationship, whatever it might be, once we change those expectations and we lower the judgment that we place on ourselves, it's so much easier to get creative.
Yeah. Yes. Well put.
I wonder if you could tell me what is a wild woman, and I want to know what that wild woman looks like for you and how you awakened her.
Okay. Well, I will say the first thought or image that comes up when we say wild woman, you know, I think of someone like getting up on, you know, like because of movies. I'm going to say, first of all, I'm really influenced by movies in Hollywood. So it's that woman who gets up and dances like on the bar, you know, like she's just free. But I don't know. I wouldn't say that now. Do you know? It's like that to me is like, well, yeah, maybe she's being more of an exhibitionist or a show off. I mean, okay. So wild woman now has to do with really, and this comes in when I was talking about swimming and being out in nature and having more quiet time, that there's this beautiful kind of quiet person. Because, you know, I'm going to say that actually, you'd never guess it, but I consider myself a rather quiet, shy person. But I've learned to be very extroverted. I mean, there's a part of me that can be very extroverted, and there's a part of me that's also very free and improv. I love to do improv dancing. I think that's a way of being the wild woman. I love to, I don't know whether you can see what I'm wearing today, but as an image consultant, after working with a woman or a man, I had men clients also, asking them, okay, about their professional life and their casual weekend life and their travel wardrobe. I said, what about the moments that you really want to be wild and self-expressive or zany? So I'm going to use that word zany because for me, I tend to be kind of a very appropriate person. You know, I've been trained to be polite, that's my upbringing, and respectful. But sometimes I like to be zany.
Yeah.
And that's
good.
I consider that's part of my wild woman.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, whether it's you think about it, the woman who wears purple or red, the red hat society, I don't know. I'm not into that so much. But however, like I love scarves as a way to express my wildness. So I think it's just finding when you ask, how did she awaken in me? I mean, it was the fact that I didn't have to always be together. I didn't have to always wear makeup.
Yeah.
You know, I got back to kind of a more authentic Jade. And Jade without all the accoutrements and everything, I'm actually a pretty quiet person. I can sit on a rock by the ocean for a couple of hours and I don't need to talk to anyone. I can just commune with nature.
That's beautiful.
So, I don't know. It has to do with contentment. And I don't know what you were looking for in an answer, but now when I think about what awakened my wild woman, it was to learn to trust this quiet side. We've kind of touched on it, but like this deeper who we are, who you are, not trying to please my family, my husband, or the world, or my peers. I don't have to look good for them.
I really connect with what you're saying, Jade. I have always been very extroverted. If you know me, I like to celebrate. I love to talk. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm loud. My sisters might, but over the last few years, I have found myself quieting down, wanting to be at home more, reading, being in nature, going out less, all of those things. And in the beginning of that, I thought, what's happening? Are things changing? Am I no longer that lively person that I have always been? And what I've grown to realize is that I'm actually getting closer to the person that I have always been. And I have so appreciated having more downtime so that I can listen to myself and not keep going. Like I was going at a pretty fast pace. I have my whole life. And the last couple of years when things have slowed down, I have so appreciated being able to think about my life and the activities I want to be in and the people I want to spend time with in a more thoughtful and intentional way. That's the word, intentional.
Very good. I think
that.
a couple of words I'm going to highlight. Intentional and thoughtful. And I think downtime is so important. It's like, and I really also talk about stripping away who you used to be. Like I always used to be perfectly put together. Because I love clothes, but clothes for me weren't necessarily about it was really self-expression, expressing who we are on the inside, but bringing it out on the outside. So I don't dress necessarily for other people. I dress for myself because it makes me feel good. It brings me a sense of joy.
Absolutely.
But that downtime, I think, is really important because here's what I call another phrase I've used. Because I had neglected my own well-being, that I needed time to water my own roots. I was so busy watering everybody else to make sure they could bloom and that they would have a good life, whether it was my friends, my clients, my projects. But what about watering my roots? And, I think almost every spiritual path will talk about having quiet time, downtime to go within, really to go within.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's really important.
That's beautiful. And I just want to share, I think too, I've noticed I've always been a quirky aquarian from the time that I was little. I found when I was younger, I was actually an introvert. I would be the wallflower in the room that didn't really want to make conversation with people. It made me uncomfortable. I would be an observer. And I would slowly get involved over time. I have taken the steps to be bolder with that and get outside my comfort zone and talk with people and be the one to start a conversation, because I know what it felt like to be on the outside and not included in what was going on in the room. So I have found that I have moved towards more of a purposeful and intentional interactions with people that I have the opportunity to meet. even if it's in a social situation where I don't know anyone. And also looking to gravitate towards other women that I can connect with and support and build those bonds and those relationships with, because that is my jam right now. I am loving that space where it's reciprocal, where you can just meet really cool people. And if you weren't brave enough to have those conversations, you would never have that relationship, whether that's in my career, whether that's through the podcast, whether that's just meeting neighbors or, you know, my the parents of my kids' friends, right? And having those conversations and again, stepping outside my comfort zone. So that has been a big piece of sort of embracing, I think, that sisterhood connection of who my wild woman is. But I have to tell you, from a fashion perspective, I love buying the quirky, goofy t-shirts of, you know, one of them is clearly not everyone was kung fu fighting. Like, I love that t-shirt. I had to buy it.
Again, clearly not everyone.
Clearly not everyone was kung fu fighting, right? Because it's one of my favorite songs from the 70s. Everybody was kung fu fighting, right? No, clearly not everyone was kung fu fighting. Like, I love those stupid punny t-shirts, and like, you know, you can be an avocado, but you can't please everyone. You know, those types of things. Like, my kids roll their eyes at me, but like, that's my thing. Like, that's what I'll wear on the weekends where I'm not dressed up. So I think you have to embrace your playful side too, because
thank you. I was just gonna, yes.
Is that, whether that's, you know, I told Sandra, I took 7 teenagers to a haunted hayride in Mansion last night, and I hate haunted hayrides in Mansion. So it was a terrible experience for me, but I had to be the brave one. Like, we're all okay. We're going to be fine. I've got you. And inside I'm like, I felt like I was 5, you know, screaming.
Right, exactly. The little 5-year-old.
Yes, but we had a blast, and they laughed and they were screaming, and it was their inaugural trip through the haunted house. And I felt so proud that I was able to say, yep, you know what? I'm not going to be the strict mom who's keeping everybody on the schedule. I'm going to be a little crazy. I might have dropped a few F-bombs in there when I got scared. But you know what? They saw me in a different light. And
exactly.
That is so important. And
they saw you as real.
Yes.
You were being your zany, wacky self.
Yes, I was.
I think we need more of that. And then also the word play. So I just want to if I may, loop back to what else woke me up, because it's kind of hard to think of, well, what else woke me up? I was fortunate enough to have a partner then, this really cool guy who loved to dance. And we would sometimes, and he had the best sound system. You know, when I'm really into music. And so it was like to have somebody, with a sound system and great music, and who loves to dance. That was like, oh my God, you know, let's get together here. And so we would go to concerts. I mean, Zydeco. I mean, we went to Santana. So dance was another way, and I don't know what for you, but I think as women, we can really express our wildness. That's when I would say now there's another kind of wildness, you know, because I think she has many faces. You know, you expressed one of your wild women that when you took the kids, Nicole. And so, you know, when we would, and I don't know if you know about Zydeco dancing, Zydeco music, it's really cool. It's like Louisiana Cajun music. Anyway, if you can just dance like nobody's looking, that whole card, I love that card. I've given it away to so many friends. Live your life like nobody's watching. Who gives a rat's ass, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm down with you, Jade. I hear you. Yes. You know, it's funny. I was photographing someone yesterday, and she was feeling very self-conscious. And I said, I want you to smile. I want you to move. I want you to flirt. I want you to do all the things like I'm not here and no one is watching. And it is that permission that we are giving to ourselves to move, to live, to act, to do whatever it is that we feel comes naturally to us.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to give ourselves that permission.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we have to claim it, getting back to your word, intentionally, because no one's really going to give it to you. You know,
No.
it's like we need to throw away, whether it was your mother or your parents or your upbringing or the priest or the church. You know, we have all these old conditioning and things that say, no, we need to be a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of getting back in touch with, again, the wild woman has never left, but she's kind of gone underground.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think she does resurface around this age because we are reflecting and rethinking, maybe revisioning. Is this how I want the next 10 years of my life to go?
Yeah.
Do I want to continue on this path, or do I need to make a little change? Do I need to take a different turn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I'm gonna hop over to a question that I really want to just dig into.
Please.
So one of my absolute favorite quotes is, so tell me, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life, by Mary Oliver. So Jade, can you share with us what are your plans for your journey, Jade?
You mean like now? Oh,
yeah,
good.
like, where are you going with this wild life?
That's so great. I was so tickled when I read that, Nicole, and I thank you for asking, because I'm usually, as I said, often asking others. It's a treat to be on the other side. I thought about it, and I'm going to say, this for me is sort of, because I was sort of in this semi-retirement mode, and yet it was getting kind of boring. I was like, oh God, I don't want to do this like the same old thing for the next 5 or 10 years. Like, God. So, and I really asked myself, well, what would light me up? What would light my fires? And then I started thinking, like, I like being around younger women. And then you guys popped up, like, manifested. So I was so happy. And like, thank you for answering the call. And then it was like, I love sharing some of my life stories and wisdom. So I thought, and then because only in the last 6 months, I've gotten introduced to not just Zoom, but the whole idea of actually, well, using social media. I'm kind of a little shy in that direction. So I'm like thinking, well, I would love to have some younger women who are really savvy with social media, but we can kind of take this on the road, if you will. We can bring it out to a larger audience. I mean, I'd love for this to be global. I think, and because I have been on other calls where I'm talking to women in Australia, in Japan, in Switzerland. Listen, I'm clear. Guess what? We all go through menopause. You've either had children or you haven't. But we all encounter, I think the cultural piece is there. But as women, we all want to be deeply fulfilled. We want to be the best possible. We don't want to, like, you know, why have a second or third rate life when you could have a first rate life? So
yeah, I think it's a great question. What do you think holds people back?
well, yeah, I was thinking about that well, I think there are several things, you know, some of them more obvious, you know, whatever their fears are, you can name it. The fear might be, you know, what will your family say? What would your friends say? What would your friends say if you started dating a certain kind of person? You know, I'm going to say, so all of those, whatever, the old conditioning, the things that stop us, and it usually has to do with things outside of us. And the worry or fears or anxiety about, will they approve? Will they still like me? And until we find a place where you can be so grounded in who you are, in your own self-worth, that who you are is just magnificent, just the way you are. That's why I said, I don't care if you're 10 pounds overweight. I used to work with people of all shapes and sizes. They were not like ideal bodies in terms of they look like a model. They probably wouldn't come to someone like me and use my services. But people who were overweight or short-waisted or they thought clothes never looked good on them. So, and reassuring them that they had a kind of magnificence that no one else did. And it lived inside of them.
Mm-hmm.
And part of their job was to find it, even if it was a tiny, tiny little flame, but to then take that flame and keep it alive. So anyway, it's part of a bigger conversation, but that's how I would answer part of it. Just normal everyday fears.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you and I are kindred spirits. I think as a photographer, a lot of the work that I'm doing, particularly with the women that I photograph, is looking inward to see that flame and to encourage it as I'm photographing them. And hopefully, through the images that they receive from me, they are feeling stronger and more confident to move forward with whatever it is that they want to move forward, whether it's a career or really just feeling a bit more confident in themselves to, let that wild woman out.
Yes, I would say, and to play with her.
Yeah.
I used to have this women's group, and I called it my, I lived in a place that had louver windows, louvers. We live here in Hawaii, so we don't have double pane like you guys. But anyway, it was all in the treetops, so I called it my tree house. And I would have a group of about 12 women who would meet once a month. And we would do this fun thing. And I would just, because we would, the word play, I said, now let's just play with, if you could be somebody really outrageous, whoever that is for you, and then just imagine you're wearing, and then sometimes we would bring clothing where it was either a blouse, or it could be a pair of shoes, or it would be scarves, whatever, or some slinky dress. I called it the Jean Harlow dress. I said, if you have a Jean Harlow dress and you want to, just for once in a lifetime, express that part of you, it is such a breakthrough. And some of these women, and some of the really quiet women who normally thought they could never be that or express that, it was just an opportunity to allow that wild woman to step out and play with her.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That is so great, Jade. So I want to know what is the best way for folks to connect with you and learn more about you and your consultation and coaching programs?
Thank you for asking. I think the best way for now, until I'm in the process of putting together a website, and I'm hoping there are a couple of women by the name of Sandra and Nicole who might be able to give me a little technical stuff. But really through my email, and from there we can either Skype or FaceTime or Zoom. But is there a way to shall I give them my email?
Sure, you could say it. You could say it verbally, and then we'll also write it in the show notes for the
platform. Oh, great. So first name is Jade, Jade, all lowercase, Young, Young, Jade Young, all one word, 13 at gmail.com.
Perfect.
Jade Young 13 at gmail.com.
That's fantastic. Jade, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for your energy and your spirit. And I'm so blessed that we met through Natalie Bonifay with the Menopause Cafe Connecticut. And I just knew when I heard your stories and just felt your spirit through Zoom that you would make a wonderful guest on the Messy Middle podcast. And I certainly wasn't disappointed today. I think this conversation was lovely. We're so excited that you were here with us today.
Well, thank you both so much too for reaching out and making this available. I mean, it really is a thrill for me. And I love being able to share some of my own stories and insights, and hope it may, it might land somewhere for someone.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Jade. Yeah.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Messy Middle Road Trip podcast and feel empowered to awaken your inner wild woman and invite her to join you on this journey.
If you would
Well,
like,
blessings and have a beautiful life, all of you.
thank you,
Thank you,
Jade.
Jade.
Take care.
If you would like to keep the conversation going, visit our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or messymiddleroadtrip.com. And if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a rating and review so we can reach more amazing middlers.
We're looking forward to our next road trip with you. Until then, thanks for riding shotgun.